Anti-Semitism is hatred of the Jews for being ethnically or religiously Jewish. Anti-Semitism is a word that gets used a lot. It'll get thrown at you if you live long enough, right? Oh, you're an anti-Semite. Well, not unless you hate the Jews for being ethnically and religiously Jewish, right? That's a spiritual problem. This is important. This is not people who have come to this logically because they thought about it and studied some history. It's because there's a break in their spirit, and it's from anger and emotion, not logic and reason, right? It is a spiritual problem. The Bible talks about this, that they hate Israel because of who they are and because of God, not because of anything else. You have to understand it spiritually. Okay, what isn't anti-Semitism? There's a lot of things that people will say, you're an anti-Semite. No, that's not what anti-Semitism is. Noticing Jewish cultural tendencies or prevalence is not anti-Semitic. Again, I can say this, right? We just buried my Jewish, unfortunately, agnostic to the day of his death, Jewish grandfather this year, or last year. I have Jewish blood. I thought the free ham joke was pretty funny. There, like you're free, right? Like noticing Jewish cultural tendencies, that's not, and again, this is how people do this. They'll say, oh, you're not even allowed to notice this stuff. Yeah, you are. You can make, that's stupid to say that. You can make jokes about things. People are people. This is not some taboo thing. And it's not anti-Semitism to say things like, here, look, I'll do some things. I'm a Jew. We bank. We're really good at it, right? We win Nobel Prizes. Unfortunately, we all love communism, apparently. Not me, but lots of us do. And we're frequently found in powerful places. Sometimes powerful places that I don't like seeing my people in, right? Doing things that I don't like seeing them do. Guess what? None of that is anti-Semitic. That's just real. So you're not, you see how that's not a problem to say that. And some Jews will tell you, you can't say that. That's not true. That's just like some black people will say, well, you can't say this and that about crime statistics. No, it's important for us to say these things, right? You just can't say it with hate in your heart saying, and you're all like that, right? But you can say the truth. Not a problem. I said it, you can too. Criticism of the Jews or Israel or the Israeli government is not necessarily anti-Semitic. I said some critical things about the Israeli government a couple hours ago, right? I said that not everything they do is great. Sometimes they do stuff that's pretty rough. That's not anti-Semitic. It's okay to say that they're doing the wrong thing. It's not a problem. Now, does that mean that some people who say those things are not motivated by anti-Semitism? Absolutely they are, right? So this is a subtle thing, but you just got to understand, you can't just say, well, you can never say they're doing anything wrong. There should never be a thing like that. We should say the truth no matter what. Evangelization of Jews is not anti-Semitic. Now, that may sound crazy to you, but that is a thing that will be told to you, especially if you're an evangelical Christian, and often by Jews. They will say, no, you can't. You're trying to convert us. You're trying to make us not Jewish. That's anti-Semitic. Man, I'll give you a free pass. If you don't go try and convert my people from what they currently believe to Christianity, you don't love them, right? But people will use this to twist you. Oh, you're an evangelical. You're probably a Republican. You love Jews. Well, don't try and convert us. That's anti-Semitic. That's bonkers. It's not true. That's satanic, actually, to say that. But it's used against you. We must not fall prey to that. Statements of actual historical or biblical fact are not anti-Semitic. It's a big thing that made the rounds on the internet recently. You can't say the Jews killed Jesus. That's anti-Semitic. I'll tell that to Peter, a Jew who was there, right? And he said, well, we all crucified the Lord of glory. So that's not anti-Semitic. I'm sorry. That's a historical fact. You can't say that, again, Jews have been in powerful places historically. It's just true. You can say whatever you want as long as it's a fact, right? You can't say that religious Jews don't know God and can't be saved. Why? That's the truth. If they're not following Jesus, they are not going to heaven, right? So none of those things are anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitism is what we're about to talk about. Hatred of God's chosen people for who they are. Blanket, blind hatred. That's what this is. And typically nowadays, it's going to come from two different places. The one of them we're pretty familiar with as Christians in the modern world. The other one we're less familiar with, unfortunately. So the first one, and these kind of correspond with our left-right politics right now. So the first one is leftist anti-Semitism. This is what you guys are used to. This is what I grew up with in the 90s. When we talked about anti-Semitism, we meant people who hated Israel, typically because they just sort of swallowed whatever they were told about the other team, about Palestine. So they loved Palestine, so they decided they were going to hate Israel. Where did this come from? A couple places. It came from foolish students, and I mean sometimes literally students, right? It's always a student movement typically. This idea that, and again, I say foolish, I mean that biblically, they are fools. And I said several times last time that they're stupid. That's not necessarily accurate and maybe unkind. But anyway, if a lot of times they are fools. They are not thinking through what they are being taught or handed, and so they are just repeating things that are being given to them, and they don't know much more than the slogans they're saying. And we'll talk about some of those slogans in a minute. And they're just repeating them. Oh, well, the Jews seem really mean. They're occupying the Palestinians, and we don't like occupiers, so we hate the Jews. And it starts out like that, right? And even that is not an anti-Semitic thing to say. It's just wrong and kind of silly. But they'll start there, and then they'll go to, and Jews are occupying people everywhere. We're occupied by the Jews in America. Whoa, dude, like, hang on, right? And that's where this stuff starts. So at a lower level, not everybody who comes to you saying Free Palestine slogans is an anti-Semite. Okay? I might disagree with them, but that doesn't make them anti-Semitic. A lot of times, though, this stuff is being propagandized to them by incredibly shrewd and cynical people who are absolutely anti-Semitic. And that's going to sound a little like conspiracy theorist, and I'd like to stay away from conspiracy theories, especially when we're talking about this topic. But that's just true. I mean, it's a documented thing. After October 7th, when you had the terror attacks in Israel, I love you guys, but I'm internet brained enough to teach you all something. A bunch of protests don't just happen on basically every liberal campus in America by accident. That's called astroturfing. You guys know what astroturfing is? Looks like grass, but it ain't, right? So that is a lot of external money that comes into the United States and supports these kinds of things from very shrewd people who want that stuff done, right? Now, again, I sound weird even saying that. I'm just telling you that's what happens. A lot of times this money is Muslim money. I'm just going to put it out there. That's what's happening. So why? Because they have an agenda in this stuff. And a lot of times you guys must understand, and I'm not speaking, I understand what I'm talking about when I say this. The better a Muslim is, the more anti-Semitic they are. The Muslims that you know that are, I'm good with Jews, that's great. They're not a good Muslim though. Because if you read the Quran, anti-Semitism is at the heart of Islam as a religion. Anti-Semitism has been raised up by Satan against the Jews. It is a counter and anti-Christ religion against God's chosen people. Got lots of reading that you can do and lots of homework. I can back that one up. So that is where this comes sometimes. Now, what is being said, right? It's literally memes and vibes, right? I'm going to teach you some slang, okay? Memes and vibes, meaning these people are not coming to you with, I've got a dissertation about how, if you really understand, they don't get to that level. It's slogans and Facebook memes and little catchy phrases and bumper stickers. That's the level that this stuff operates on, right? And you got to love these people and understand they're just kind of grabbing stuff like you do when you're 20 or whatever, or older and should know better. But they're just grabbing onto stuff, and to them that makes sense, and so they go with it, okay? So you don't have to always be so, like, they don't know any better. And so when they grab onto these slogans and they sound right and they make you sound like a kind, compassionate, upstanding, intelligent person to say the upstanding, intelligent people say these things, so I'm going to say them. That's the level that this is operating at. What are some of these things? All right. From the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. You ever hear somebody say that? Ask them, what river and what sea? The river is the Jordan River, and the sea is the Mediterranean. What is in between those two things? 8 million Jews. That's a genocidal slogan from Hamas. It comes from Gaza. It's a Hamas slogan that says, yeah, everybody between there, our land, our stuff. That's genocide, man. So when people repeat that, again, do they all know they're saying that? No, they don't know. In fact, you can see videos where they go interview these poor students and they're like, which river and what sea? And they're like, oh, no. Like, right? Like they don't know what they're saying sometimes. But there are people that know what they're saying that invented that slogan. And they mean it. So that is it is a hatred of the people that live in that area saying that's ours and we're going to take it. Resistance by any means necessary. By any means necessary means killing people. That's what that means. And when you hear that slogan thrown around by, usually, I'm just going to say it like this, by white kids in the keffiyeh, right, in the headdress, right, who don't know what they're doing. Yeah, resistance by any means necessary is not like tweets, guys. Like, it's awful stuff. And they don't understand that, but that is what is being cultivated, is this experience of what Israel's doing so bad that it doesn't matter what we do, which is anti-Semitic. Globalize the intifada. We learned about the intifada. It's an Arabic word that means struggle or uprising. When intifadas happen, people die. Innocent people on both sides die. When they say globalize it, what do they mean? They mean they would like it to happen in your backyard. And I say the intifada, that's what we talked about towards the end. That's the messiest version of this stuff. It's grabbing a bunch of Arab kids who are unemployed, who don't have anything better to do, and saying throw rocks at a tank and see what happens. They want that to happen in your backyard. Anybody who wants that is anti-Semitic and not a great person. I'll just say it that way. So this is these slogans. And again, it sounds, oh yeah, the struggle of the Palestinians. Yeah, struggle to do what? Like, but people haven't thought that far, unfortunately. Last one. This was a tweet, and I told you I spend way too much time on the internet. This was a tweet that came out right after October 7th, I think on the day after October 7th, which was this huge massacre of people in southern Israel by Hamas terrorists from Gaza. And a young person, I can only assume a person from the West, and I didn't research who they were because it's probably not important, tweeted this. They said, "What did you think decolonization meant? Papers and vibes?" Yeah. So what that meant is they saw an event where thousands of people died incredibly gruesome deaths, and they said, this is what we said we wanted to do. Decolonization means this, right? Decolonization being like one of those critical theory slogans, meaning we've got to undo all the work of colonizing. And they say, that's what we meant. It's going to get messy. We don't care. That's anti-Semitic and kind of psycho. But these are kind of the slogans that you see floating around. And when people, we're nice people, so we'd like to imagine that this isn't true. There are people who believe these things and want, and when they say these things, they're saying it with their chest, and that's what they want, right? Not everybody, but there are some people. That is anti-Semitism. It's hatred of God's people just simply for who they are. Whether these people understand it or not, they're tools used by Satan to advance his great deception. And this is all through Scripture. Hatred of God's people is hatred of God. That is where it comes from, whether they know it or not. Satan is using this and stirring it up and saying, yeah, that's right. We're going to resist what God's doing. He comes up against the Lord and against his anointed, the Bible says. And you got to love them in that, you can love people strongly. You can say, no, we're not doing that here. But you can also understand that a lot of them are very deceived. Especially the most hateful people are the most deceived, right? And it's usually coming from a place where, look, if this is what your whole life is about, your home life is usually not great. Let's put it that way. Your life is not great. Your prospects are not awesome if you've decided on to just hate a whole group of people as kind of your personality. So think about it in that way. All right. Next. So that's the stuff we're used to, right? We grew up, we live in Alabama. We're pretty used to that, right? Oh yeah, that's right. Democrats hate Israel. That is kind of our thinking. Now this new one is not, I say new. It is new in that it's becoming more public now. It's not new as in like it's always been this way. There has been a strain of very right-wing anti-Semitism for a long time, Hitler and stuff. But this is new to me. I've never seen this happen in the way that it's currently happening, as public as it's happening. I've never seen it as prevalent in the church ever before. And this is the interesting one that we do need to be a little more aware of. So rightist anti-Semitism, meaning anti-Semitism coming from the right wing. Same method of spreading as the other stuff. Foolish students and shrewd people propagandizing it through memes and vibes. These are people outside the church. They're just the typical people, dumb internet people who are hyper fixated typically on being white and super excited about that and wanting to make sure. And because they see Jews who, there's a lot of Jews who look like me and whiter than me, but logic is not the point here, right? So they see them as other, different, separate, weird. So we've got to be against them, just like we got to be against all people. And it gets very gross very fast, right? You're going to hear, I promise you guys, I have used the most palatable versions of all this as we discuss it. There's way worse dirt to go find. Please don't. But this is stuff that these people are propagandizing through historical ignorance. And when I say ignorance, I mean these people are ignorant. They do not understand what has happened or is happening, but they've grabbed onto a little slice of something that makes them feel knowledgeable, powerful, victimized, right? Everything that you guys are used to about critical race theory and all that stuff that kind of blew through the church, woke stuff, invert it. And that's what these people are doing. So Brandon and I were talking about, it's the same thing. It's just the other end of the horseshoe. You're a victim because the Jews have taken all your stuff. They're inflating your currency. They're filling your life with pornography. They're, all this stuff. Oh, it's all the Jews. And that's why you can't get ahead. That's why you have a problem. But if you just be strong and stand up for your white race, then you can, right? And if you're a 20-year-old guy who has a terrible life, that sounds attractive. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Like, that's why guys buy into this. It's sad ideology, but it makes them feel powerful. So you got to love them in understanding, like, hey, and unfortunately, it's also half-truths. It's just like the other thing. When people say Palestine is going through a tough time, that's half true. Why and what should we do about it? It's the rest of it. But that's true, right? That little bit. So this is the same thing, half-truths. Did you know that the Jews have always been really powerful in banking? Yeah, that's a historical fact. I can explain to you why that happened, actually. Ask me afterwards. That's a half-truth. So what? What does that mean about Jews spiritually or what we should do? Well, we don't get that far. We just use these little half-truths that sounds right. That's sort of something and then they work on that. I'm going to use some of these phrases just so you're aware of these as what are called dog whistles, right? A dog whistle is something only a dog hears. So these are coded phrases that get thrown around, and sometimes not so coded, to kind of signal to each other or to kind of get you started on something. Hey, here's a little slogan that sounds great, and we'll go from there. First one is post-war consensus. The post-war consensus is a phrase for these people that means, after World War II, where everybody lied about the Holocaust and made up Israel so that the Jews could be in charge, that's the post-war consensus. So if you say something like, I support Israel, say, I see you're a big post-war consensus guy, you idiot, right? Like you don't get it, what they're doing, right? That's what gets traded around. 6 million ? Means what you think it means. So Holocaust denialism is a huge part of this. Tyler and I laugh about this all the time. It's always, I hate the Jews, and they're not the real Jews, and the Holocaust didn't happen, but it would have been good if it did. Okay, you're a fool, right? But this is Holocaust denialism is a huge part of this, and is creeping into the church, unfortunately, in certain sections. Christian Prince, they're talking about Hitler. This is a historical revisionism, an attempt to repaint Hitler as somehow some strong Christian leader. Hitler would be turning over in his grave if he could hear that right now, because he didn't agree with that, and I've got receipts. I can just tell you. Like guys, I don't have a lot of hobbies, but World War II is one of my hobbies, guys. So I'm telling you, this is silly. But for these people, what does it trade on? Oh, all this woke stuff. Look what it's done to our country. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that woke stuff. That's bad. Yeah, and they're all telling you that you're racist when you're not. Yeah, that's right. I don't. Yeah. And back when we didn't have, who fought that stuff is Hitler. Now, you might say, oh, that's wrong. No, that's accurate. Hitler was very against left-wing, very debauched stuff going on, and we can talk about this more later. You come ask me. I'll give you some stuff. Hitler was very against left-wing, gross, debauched stuff that was happening in his country. Mostly that was happening because Jews were introducing abstract art and all these other crazy things into Germany. And Hitler said, these are the awful, evil, dirty people that are corrupting our German blood, right? And so these people say, see, we had it right when we got rid of all these awful people and we were strong and Christian. Never mind that that's not corresponding to historical reality. It wasn't the Jews that made Germany unchristian. Germany had a lot of problems, which I can explain to you. But that's too difficult and complicated. It's as simple as depravity bad. Yes, Hitler good. Like they operate at that level. And they make you make these distinctions and they tell you these half-truths. And pretty soon you're going along with stuff and you're like, whoa, how do we get to Hitler? And that's how this stuff goes. Kinism, we got to go faster. Kinism is a slogan. This is the one that you will see. These other ones, most Christians would never say this stuff, even, because it just sounds so awful and they know it. Kinism comes around in the church a lot. Kinism is what you say when you want to be racist, but you don't feel comfy saying it out loud. So kinism means, I'm just for my kin. The Bible tells us that we're supposed to support, the Bible says your family first and the other people later. You wouldn't want to be worse than an unbeliever, right? You've got to support your family first. So I'm a kinist. Let other people, I don't care about other people. They're good. Let them take care of themselves, but I care about my kin first. Now, never mind, you'll start quoting passages about every tribe and tongue and nation. They don't like you when you do that and they start yelling at you, by the way. But never mind. It's operating at that level. And it tells a young, disenfranchised, beat down man, especially, hey, you're good. It's good that you're the way you are, which is true. Okay, all white folks in this room right now, right? So are we bad for being white? No. And is it wrong to tell people that? Yes. So then they trade on that and say, you're better for being white. And they trot out a bunch of absolutely demonic lies from the early 1900s that came from the theory of evolution saying, you're white because you're the most evolved person. The same stuff that Hitler brought in and said, this is why we're going to fight against the Jews. They recycle all that stuff and say, no, you're better because of who you are, which is I feel bad saying that stuff out loud. But you can see how it comes from this place of they tell a little half-truth, and then you set the hook. Last one is race realism. Sounds like what it is. It's just this idea that, just look at the stats. We're just better. Well, you just got to be realistic. You've just got to be intelligent. If you were like me and you were smart and you really knew what was going on, you could handle the hard truths and you would hate the Jews like me. It's just about as despicable as you think. Who are some people? Now, I could have gone on and on and on and on about this. But I told Tyler, even last time, Tyler is my pastor and he's a good friend of mine. He loves me very much. And he pulled me up short about a year ago. He said, you got to get off the internet, dude. And he was right. You got to be careful with this stuff. If you spend all day intaking this stuff, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to be very honest with you guys. If you spend all day intaking this stuff, it will twist you up in ways that you're not prepared for. You will begin to believe some of these things. I'm just going to tell you straight up. Like, you have to be very careful. Because of the way these things are presented, you've got to know the truth. And if you're going to go down a rabbit hole, you've got to have a good line up to the top, and you can't stay down there very long. And that's why I tell people, like, we're not here to argue with these people. They don't want to be argued with. They're not here they didn't come to this position through rational argument. They came to this position through emotion and spiritual problems that they have, and they need to be dealt with in that way. They need to be prayed for, resisted if necessary, and loved on, and laughed at sometimes. I'm gonna be honest. That's a way of doing stuff. God sits in the heavens and laughs. It says in Psalm, so it's okay for you to too. This stuff is foolish. But I will call it a couple people because you may or may not be aware of them, and one of them you may have heard of, whether you know or not. So the first one is, this is the easy stuff. These are the very fringe people. These are both people that would claim the name of Jesus. I take that back. I don't know what Daryl Cooper says he is. Corey Mahler says that he's a Christian, and he says that in order to be really a Christian, you have to espouse his particular brand of pro-Hitler, openly fascist, completely racist ideology. He has a podcast called Stone Choir, which, if you ever hear about, this is a very, what this is happening is it's getting in the back door of a bunch of Reformed churches that for years and years and years and years have taught replacement theology. Like, if you think the stuff that Chris was talking about is bad and like that's not biblical, crank that up to 10. It's been taught for years in these Reformed churches, unfortunately. And look, I have friends that are replacement, okay? They're not, to be replacement is not to be anti-Semitic. I just want to make that clear. Like, I disagree with you, and we can have a fun conversation about it, but those guys don't hate the Jews, typically. But unfortunately, what happened is, when that was taught for years and years, their younger generation came up and said, yeah, not only have we replaced, they just assume we've replaced the Jews, of course, because I've been taught that for all these many years, and they're under a curse from God. Yeah, of course. And I think they're dirty and awful. Well, hold up a second. And now these younger guys are pulling a very fringe group of the Reformed Church into some very dark places, and Corey's a part of that. He is absolutely apostate and subscribes to doctrines of demons. I can say that safely from Scripture. Daryl Cooper is kind of like the more palatable version of that. Daryl Cooper is the #1 history podcast on Substack called Martyr Made, which you should avoid. And he sets himself up as, I'm just asking the questions. I'm just an interesting history guy. I'm asking the questions like, well, how many Jews really died in the Holocaust? Well, I don't know. I think Winston Churchill was the real villain in World War II. Well, gee, I don't know. And just keeps doing this, right? Daryl Cooper was platformed on Tucker Carlson recently. So this is, when I say there's rings to this, right? People like Corey are sad. Corey was expelled from the Lutheran Church. Do you know how hard you have to work for Lutherans to kick you out? So those people are pretty crazy, right? Daryl is part of this new group of people that are bringing this stuff far inside the church and trying to dress it up, class it up, and then present it in right-wing circles as, well, really, we ought to be, and it's always presented as, well, aren't you anti-woke? Yes. Well, then you have to be pro this. No. I don't have to be anything, right? I'm on nobody's side. I'm on Jesus' side. So you do have to be careful with this stuff, because oftentimes it is getting in there before you're aware of what exactly the person is peddling. And I've been guilty of this, man. I've been right alongside people sometimes publicly where they're like, you find out what they actually think, and I'm like, oh, we don't need to be friends, because this is common. And you also need to understand too that there's varieties of this, right? Not everybody who makes a joke about the Jews or says some edgy thing to you online is an anti-Semite. Some of them are just young guys who are conservative and they're impolite. That's not the same thing, right? I have friends where I'm like, oh God, you're a knucklehead, but that's not the same thing as hating the Jews. And it's okay for us to distinguish, right? Whether these people understand it or not, when they're propagating this stuff, they are tools used by Satan to advance his great deception. And you can absolutely see from both arms of the political spectrum this idea that, well, the one thing we agree on is Israel bad, right? Oh, that's funny. Why does everybody agree on that? That sounds satanic or something. What should we do? What should the church do? A couple things as we close. Number one, these views thrive on ignorance and swallowing small bits of sounds good stuff. Don't do that. You can't build your faith on slogans, and you can't build your kids' faith on slogans. When your kids ask awkward questions, tell them the whole truth, not part of it. When they say, well, my friend said that the Palestinians are oppressed, don't say, that's not true. Yeah, I'll tell, yes, correct. Why? How? Let's talk about it. Let's watch a video. Let's go check out this conference, right? Like you guys are doing. Do that. When you operate on half-truths, someone comes in and tells your kid the whole truth, and if any of it is at all real, that's like this red pill moment, they call it online, right? Like in the Matrix, you take the red pill, and all of a sudden you understand the real world. It's very difficult to combat that when you've lied to your kids, or you've lied to your friend, and they discover a real truth that you didn't tell them because it sounded icky to say. Don't ever do that. Tell the truth, even if it's hard, even if you end up agreeing with somebody that you don't like, right? Well, I can't say that. It's woke. Who cares? Say what's true. I can't, this guy told me that Christians love everybody and that's weak. Well, okay, he can lump it. We do. I don't care who says that. If I'm standing next to some weirdo that says that too, I guess he's right on this one, right? We can't do this weak thing where we're going to compromise just to have certain people like us. That's how we have gotten into this situation, is being more afraid of who we're standing next to than what the gospel says. And it happens on both ends of this political spectrum, by the way. Study to show yourself approved. Tell the truth. Say, even if it's tough, don't create an environment where a snake can creep in and say, did God really say? And honestly, guys, you've got to be ready to be hated. If you are going to get up on your 10 toes and say the truth about Israel in the modern world, nobody is going to think you're cool. Guess what? It's not as flashy to say, well, it's complicated. Well, the Bible says that they hate Jesus right now, but he's going to save them all in the end, is a bad bumper sticker. So you've got to be ready to be the guy in the room that says, well, I don't know, let's talk about that. Rather than, that's a good slogan, I like that. It's not sexy to speak the truth, and a lot of people are not going to like you. And also, guys, I know we've laughed a little bit, but I'm serious. Like, I've prayed about how to do this. You have to laugh. Like, you've got to laugh at this stuff. It's how the Jews have been handling trouble and woe for thousands of years. It's what we do, right? If you're constantly freaked out, oh no, it's like, guys, there's been anti-Semitism as long as there have been Semitic people in the world. That is how it has been. This is not new. Honestly, a lot of it is pretty stale stuff that's getting recycled. You can't worry about it. This is going to blow through. How fast did woke blow through the church? So fast, right? Now there's certain parts where they'll hang on to it, but it's okay. They're old. But the church, it blows through the church, these things, right? Do you guys remember the emergent church? Where'd they all go? Two of you shook your head. Where'd they all go? Yeah, they're gone, right? So guess what? This is the same thing that's going to happen. This is going to rip through. Some people are going to fall for it, and we're not going to, because we're going to stand on the word. So just keep that in your mind. You don't have to worry about these things. We are grafted into God's eternal plan. He ain't going to lose, right? So we don't need to worry about it, but it is good to be aware of these things, and especially if you come across this stuff with friends of yours, relatives, neighbors, just know, like, this is compelling. Otherwise, these people wouldn't be into it. So don't we're joking about stuff, but they're buying into this stuff on very little evidence. Love on them and withstand it, speak the truth, and the Lord's going to give you the grace to say what you should say.